Hey guys, I just wanted to pop in and do this quick training around I have to do everything myself. What to do when you're trying to make agreements with people and then the people don't follow through with what they say that they were going to do. This can be just so frustrating. Something funny is going on. I was hoping to be able to have access to my laptop and some notes there, but it's not working for me. Anyway, it's all right. We'll just go forward. So if you're here, say hi in the comments. I'd love to see who's on and meet some new faces as much as we can through Facebook video, right? Some questions were asked of me around, we have these conversations, particularly in marriage, right? We have these conversations. He says he's going to do one thing, but then he doesn't do it. Or in business, like we have team members and we have meetings, right? And everybody has a task and they have a deadline. And then what do we do when they don't do the thing that they said they were going to do? And after working with a lot of clients, I can tell you everybody shows up differently in these spaces, and it definitely bumps up against all our conditioning and stuff. So don't feel like at any point, if you start to feel like triggered or like, gosh, dang it, why do I react this way? Like, just know that these are tricky spaces to navigate. They're vulnerable and they're usually messy. And when done well, they can actually create deeper connection and intimacy and understanding. And when we do some of our other behaviors that are just our default patterns and things, often it can result to lost opportunity for connection. And in my world, connection is everything. And if I know that I could do something to bring in some more connection, I'm going to do it. So, I want to give some examples around this. I recently was in a coaching space with somebody, and she had made big promises about what I was going to be receiving. But the schedule and stuff wasn't super clear. It wasn't really clear. It wasn't like, okay, you have this many sessions and we're going to work with you on these areas or whatever. It wasn't super clear. And so I went into it just trusting. I'd had experiences with her before, and I was like, I'm sure I'll get results. It'll be great. Well, she was kind of going through some like identity shifts during this time. And as it turned out, I didn't really get what I thought I was going to get. It felt like she would get around to me when she got to it. And I didn't really feel like I got what I paid for. And so what did I do in that situation? Nothing. I did nothing. She intimidated me. And I felt too nervous to say anything. And I had experienced some like verbal lashing out and stuff by her in the past. And so I did nothing, and I got nothing out of that. And I actually look back on that, and even though that wasn't a decision that was really made from integrity, I feel like complete about that, because she was someone in my life that I don't really want to lean in. I don't want to keep connecting with her. And I can say that with confidence. That feels in alignment. So I share that example because somebody in the comments to my little poll said, I want to know the right answer. And it's like, the truth is there's no right or wrong answer, but there are answers that will bring us closer to the outcomes that we want to experience. And then there are answers that will bring us further away. And it's up to us and our intuition to follow those. There's no right or wrong answer here, but let me give you some tools that have helped my clients a lot when it comes to in their relationships with their marriage, in their relationships as a parent, and then in their relationships in their business with their team members that are really helpful. But we can't ignore the fact that on from the get-go, we have to determine like how close of a relationship do I actually want with this person. And I don't think we give ourselves that space enough. So another example is with a referral partner. So say you set up a referral partnership. You know, the girls just talked about this. Adriana and Therese just talked about this a couple days ago. Like, don't do your business alone. Get partners and create strategic partnerships and make agreements with each other, right? If you have a very distant referral relationship with somebody, and then they do something that feels like, well, that's out of integrity, or I don't really actually like how they're showing up in the world, like it's not in alignment for me, or, you know, these kinds of things, you have a decision there. And a lot of us just don't even recognize we have a choice. We just go the other direction. But maybe you are curious. Maybe you do want to lean in. Maybe you do want to have a conversation. It's up to you to decide if you want to create more connection or not. The truth is if you just walk away and do nothing, you will lose the connection, right? And maybe that's what you want. If you want connection, just sticking around and pretending like nothing's happening is not going to bring more connection into the relationship or more trust or more of what you want. It's going to do nothing. It's probably going to create more discomfort for you. But if you want to lean in and you're curious about, like, maybe there's some misunderstanding or miscommunication, if you have a conversation with this person, it's likely to lead to deeper connection. It also always comes with risk. That's why these conversations are difficult. So you get to, you know, navigate. Do I want that or not? When it comes to our marriage, we know we want to lean in, right? Like, we want to lean in. We always want more connection. That's why we're in this marriage, unless we're considering ending it, you know. We want more connection. And so again, if you're in a situation where your husband has said, or your wife has said, I'm going to do this or that, you feel like you guys have a strong agreement around something, and then your spouse doesn't follow through on what they said they were going to do, like, moving away from the situation is going to leave lost connection, loss of connection on the table. Sitting here and doing nothing is going to just make you more uncomfortable and create more disconnection. So that's also going to lead to disconnection. Or you can choose to lean in and have a conversation. It comes with a risk. It could create more disconnection. But again, with some of these tools I'm going to give you, it also is an invitation, always is an invitation for deeper connection. We don't really see that, do we? Have you guys, you who are watching here, have you ever thought, you know, when someone doesn't do what they say they're going to do, I think it's a great opportunity for connection and understanding. And I just get really curious, and I just, right? It actually is. And my husband and I are able now to, we cultivate this, and we do this all the time. We're able to just have these conversations. And then when something shows up, it's like, I'm super curious because I have total trust in this person. Now we've created that. And so usually he does what he says he's going to do. So I would love to understand. I wonder if he's going through something. I wonder if there's some way I can support him, or you know, or there's just, maybe he needs to be able to talk about some things, or maybe he just forgot. Maybe he needs less things on his plate, or whatever, right? Like, I'm just curious. It feels so good. So I want to make sure that I'm going through all the different ways that we could respond. Yeah, I loved Kristen in the comments of this post said, I wouldn't say I confront them immediately, but I open a space for open communication immediately, and I think there's a big difference. She said that, and I like, yes, I agree. I think there's a big difference too. I have seen in the business world really benevolent women who do not know how to be kind, and they do not really know how to make people feel safe. And while it's not 1,000% our job to make people feel safe, we can do our part. We can meet people halfway. I'm super passionate about this. We can help people to feel safe. And confronting them versus opening open communication around something feel very different to me. So I often will work with women and hear from women who are like, my employees, I can't trust them. Like, they never do. I give and give and give, and they never do what I'm asking of them, right? I would invite them to look at, are they showing up in the masculine energy the whole time in those relationships, thinking that they have to be a CEO, which is prescribed by masculine heralded society that looks like the way that the men have been doing it forever, which is like kind of dictator. I'm kind of the king and I'm going to just tell you what to do and you better be grateful and you better do a good job and all that, right? Or have you been able to create some connection? Do they actually feel that connection with you? Is there more there, a space for open communication? Do they actually feel that, right? So often when people say to me, I can't trust my employees, I'm like, well, how many employees have you been through? Because it's very possible that it's not just the employee's fault. Takes two to tango, right? So, obviously I'm a little bit more 3 strikes and you're out mentality. Only one person selected that. 3 strikes and you're out mentality, because I'm like, well, I'll talk to you about it, but like, if this just keeps happening, like, come on, right? And I think some of that is merited. Again, say hi in the comments if you're watching. I'd love to hear from you. Maybe you are commenting and I just can't see the comments, because that happens sometimes too. Or maybe you're all super quiet. And I've also worked with clients who say nothing and give a lot of chances. This is actually falls into kind of the toxic feminine side. When we struggle with boundaries, we struggle with being able to speak up for ourselves. It's funny because actually there's some toxic masculine, toxic feminine that can show up in this space, because sometimes this can also be the space where it's like, well, I gave them the job. They didn't do the job. I'm not going to talk to them about it. I'm just going to do it. And then this like pattern just continues and the resentment builds. That would fall into the toxic masculine space. Or they say they're going to do the thing or whatever, they don't do it, and then it just doesn't get done. And then I like am kicking around wondering like, how am I going to make sure to get this thing done? And I probably should talk to them, but I don't want to. And so I would just invite you, if either of those are like your default go-tos, where you're either overdoing things all the time and you feel a lot of resentment about the people around you, or you're letting people off the hook all the time and not really speaking your voice, just be with yourself. I do this, like I put one hand on my heart, one hand on like my belly or my low belly, even my womb space. And I do a little meditating and I go, where does that come from? What emotion is coming up? Where do I feel that in my body? And what is it that is preventing me from being able to move forward or see a clear next step for this? Okay, I think we've talked about all the different ways that you can show up in these different places and spaces. Now, let's talk about some tools. You guys want some tools around what to do with this? This is literally what I teach my clients. So this is the thing that people pay me thousands of dollars. One of the many things to be in with them to help them navigate the nuts and bolts of this. And I'm just like feel super grateful to be able to be here and share it with you guys, and hope that you'll take some of these things and go and implement them. And I want to hear how it goes. When it comes to agreements, here's the basics. Number 1, make sure there was an actual super clear agreement. This is so important. Most often, I would say like 75% of the time, we thought there was a clear agreement, but it actually wasn't super clear. And you can go through simple, like who, what, where, when, why, how, right? Like if those things aren't all there, then it's likely that the agreement wasn't super clear. This just happened with me and my team today. It was the funniest thing. I had thought I said Wednesday at 11, but I guess I said Thursday at 11. Actually, I've been making mistakes like that all week. It must be, I'm going to blame it on the planets. So I said, let's move our meeting from Friday to what I thought I said was Wednesday. And then one of my assistants sends me the link to this call, and at 11 on Wednesday. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I usually am the one that sends out the link to the team for these team calls. But I was like, well, that was nice of her. And so I go on and I click on the link, and it's a whole other meeting where they're talking about my marketing strategies the VA company that I go through to look for holes in my marketing or whatever. I was pissed. I thought that my head assistant set up an appointment without telling me with her company to like target me and like tell me what I need to do different in my marketing. I was really mad. And then it wasn't until this morning that we finally realized, I said Thursday at 11. She was going to have the meeting by herself, and she had asked me if she could do that like in a previous meeting last week. And I said yes. So I thought she was like, pulling one on me. She wasn't. Like, oh my gosh, the agreement wasn't clear. The time, right? That's really simple. The agreement wasn't clear. We do this all the time in our really close relationships, right? With our spouse or significant other or whatever. It's like, we might say, I'm so thirsty. We're sitting on the couch and we say, I'm so thirsty. And that's our way of asking them for water and assuming that they agree, and then we're upset with them and they don't bring us water. Anybody else guilty? Right? So we want to make sure, was there actually a clear agreement from the beginning? And then we get so mad. It's like, well, it was obvious. No, it wasn't. Literally, when it's a miscommunication, it's time for you to go, okay, yeah, right. I'm safe, and this was just a miscommunication. We just need to be more clear in the beginning. Who, what, where, when, why, how. Get really specific with your agreements, especially when it comes to crucial conversations. I'm not going to wring my husband's neck over not getting me a cup of water. But like if we were talking about having our next baby or something, and then he doesn't follow through with the agreement, I would, there would be some big conversation around that. So that's the first thing. Make sure you're super clear in your agreements. The second thing is when you set forth the agreement, people want to call this boundaries. People want to say, go in and set boundaries. Boundaries don't make any requests. Usually boundaries are like, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing and what I think you should do, and then I'm going to expect you to obey. So I actually don't really operate hugely from a space of boundaries. Boundaries are so popular, but a boundary literally means a division between connection. Like my fence is a boundary between me and the people on the street. And so I don't really want boundaries in my relationships. I want agreements where there's open understanding and we can communicate and we can like go back and forth. So I would make this request, this agreement, who, what, where, when, why, how. Would you be willing to do this thing for this thing on this day in this place at this time, right? That's what this sounds like. Would you be willing to? A request, not a boundary. And then you get their agreement. And this is so important. Like if you operated in unhealthy spaces in your relationships, the person on the other side may not feel, or it may not even be because of your relationship, it might just be because of their relationship with other people. They might not feel safe enough to say no. So that's super important too. Like you have full permission to accept this agreement or to tell me what parts about this don't work for you, right? So getting that trust between a relationship to be able to be like, hey, could you do this thing and da 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 da, and then they say yes. It's like they need to know that they have permission to say no. And if they say no, it's not the end of the conversation. It's an opportunity for more connection. It's an opportunity to go, oh, what part about this doesn't work for you? How can we tweak and change this so it works for both of us, right? Okay, so does that make sense? Number 2 is get their agreement. And a lot of times we just set these boundaries like, look, if you come home late again, you're going to have to sleep on the couch. It's like, oh, like no one can win in that situation. And all of a sudden we're set up in a moral container where either they're on this side of the boundary and they're a good boy or a good girl, or they're outside, they're on this side of the boundary and they suck. And that shame is real, right? What about some agreements? Can we make some agreements instead? Get their agreement. Number 3, what do we do when the agreement's not kept? And this is the part where if you've made it through the first 2, we can get so discouraged. It's like, oh, I did it right. It was super clear. I know that we both were very clear on what the agreement was. We even wrote it down, right? And then he didn't follow through, or she didn't follow through. And I'm so frustrated. What do I do now? Okay, this is what we do. This is how we open communication, like we talked about earlier. You go to the person and say, hey, previously we had talked about this thing. We made an agreement around this. And I was curious. I'm wondering. I want to understand you. Some version of that, right? Tell me what prevented you from doing it. Tell me what prevented you from blah, 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 blah that we agreed to. And truly coming from a place of wanting to understand them. Now, that's kind of easier when you're talking about teammates. I think there's like a little less charge involved, right? Like, I don't feel like I'm not going to spend the rest of my life with my teammates. So it's sort of like, hey, what prevented you? I want to hear, and then my teammate comes to me and she's like, I'm so sorry. My boyfriend broke up with me this week and I feel terrible. I know I haven't shown up with my full capacity in your company this week. And like, this is the kind of conversations we have because she knows I really mean it. I want to connect with you. I want to understand what's up for you and how we can both support you to be at your peak performance next week, right? But when it comes to our partnerships, our spouses, it can be a little more difficult to ask that question without an agenda, right? It's like, he said he was going to fix the printer. This was the example I gave in the post I made. He said he was going to fix the printer. We've been talking about it for 4 months. I sit down and I'm going to, this is from one of my clients actually, sit down. I'm just about to do some training. I need these papers printed. It's 10 minutes before the event. And lo and behold, he never did the thing. He never fixed the printer. And we talked about it 3,000 times, right? So her emotion is up to here. It is so high. There's no way she can just approach him in that moment and be like, she's going to be like, tell me what prevented you from fixing the printer. I'm going to wring your neck. That's not the space to ask this question. If you can't actually approach the question from a space of neutrality or acceptance or whatever, that's the opportunity for you to go do your own inner work, right? This is the space to go, oh, well, holy crap. Thank you, universe, for showing me this thing that's a mirror to something deep in me that wants to be healed. So, and we do that work, right? We go down to the nitty gritty, and it turns out when she was a kid, she opened up her fridge one day and she's home alone with her baby sister, taking care of her baby sister, and there's no food in the house. Not one drop of food in the house. So when someone doesn't do what they say they're going to do for her, it triggers the crap out of her. It literally makes her feel like she's back in that position. She had to go outside and scavenge for food and ended up finding some mangoes. And that's how she and her sister fed themselves that day. So what a gift, right? Now she can honor that inner child that experienced that deep pain. She can feel those feelings that she wasn't able to feel when she was a kid. She can give herself what she needs in those places and spaces, and become aware of the fact that actually I think I do get triggered when people don't do what they say they're going to do. And it's an opportunity for me to heal this little inner child who didn't have the right things happen to her. Right? Can't you just feel that? It's of course, this would be this huge reaction. And that's how we access our feminine energy, guys. Then we go deal with the situation at hand, which is our masculine energy. But we can go into it with a space of understanding. We can say, hey, what was it that prevented you? And actually, I need to share some feelings. Can I share some feelings with you? I felt so hurt. I felt to the point of rage. The story I was telling myself is I was back in that kitchen all alone at 11 years old, looking at an empty kitchen and an empty fridge and thinking, no one cares about me. I have to do everything for myself. If I'm going to survive, it's up to me. That's what happened for me, right? You can go in, and then can you see how that would create deeper connection? And how that would also encourage your spouse to be like, oh, here I was thinking this printer thing was like, on the like Z priority, right? Or like on the, bottom of the list. I had no idea that something like this is such a big trigger. It sets them up in a position to be like, I can see now. This is a huge priority for you. It's super important to you. It's super important that I do what I say I'm going to do and actually evaluate my time. My husband and I had to go through this very thing, you guys. My husband loves to say yes to everything. He's just a nice guy, wants to say what I want to hear. He just loves me, wants to give, right? But he had to do that for me. I come from massive abandonment. He had to like evaluate your time, and don't tell me you're going to do it if you're not going to do it. Because I go to all kinds of crazy places and I can go do all this healing work all day long, but you're never going to see me because I'm going to be in my bed with my journal sobbing all the time, trying to heal my abandonment wounds, right? Is this relating, you guys? Again, I can't see your comments, so I don't know. I'm trusting that you're there and that you're commenting. So we ask, the phrase is, this third piece, what do I do if they don't keep the agreement? What is preventing you? And super important, what's the intention? To understand, to connect. And then from there, it's like, oh, okay, I see, you're super overwhelmed. Can we come up with a new strategy for the printer? Like, can we come up with some sort of new agreement, right? If you can approach it from that place of neutrality, it's like, okay, like there's stuff that needs to get done. Let's get this stuff done. We can still get the stuff done. And it doesn't have to mean like the end of the world, right? The one last thing I want to say before I wrap up is sometimes we want people, we're all up in people's yards. Okay, in the 12-step recovery program, I've been a part, my husband and I together have probably done about 11 years of 12-step addiction recovery program stuff. We don't go anymore, but we've done a lot of years worth of that stuff. One of the analogies that they use that I still utilize in my work all the time is like people living as neighbors, and one person lives on this side of the street and the other person lives on this side of the street. And when we're doing our work and we're being sovereign individuals and we're, living in a state that feels very good and free and empowering for ourselves, we only pay attention to our yard. We only, like, oh, look, there's some garbage in my yard. I'm going to clean it out. Oh, I've got some weeds. I need to take care of those. We can ask people for help. That's no problem or whatever. But we're just all about our own yard. When we're in a codependent space, all of a sudden we find ourselves up in somebody else's yard, even our husbands, right? So we're looking across the street and we're like, you're getting fat. We're looking across the street and we're like, there's a lot of weeds in that yard. How much money you been making this month? Right? Like, we're all up in their yard and we're like, I don't like what I see in your yard. And so I'm going to come over and I'm either going to do it for you or I'm going to tell you what I think you should do about it. And it's super damaging when it comes to something that literally only affects their yard and your view. Like, it doesn't really, like, you've got to pull away, especially when it comes to our spouses, right? Again, I'm speaking this from experience. I'll share a vulnerable story and then I promise I'll finish here. I gotta go. But my husband's grandpa passed away from obesity. I want to say he was like 67. You don't die from obesity, but he passed away from complications due to obesity. Other health things that just layered and layered and layered. And because of his weight, it just overcomplicated everything and led to a very early death. And we're actually getting ready this weekend to go and celebrate his grandma's 85th birthday. So she's now been alive. I want to say it's been another 10 years, something like that. It's been about 10 years since he passed away. And that's time that, they could have had together. And I just look at that. It's sad to me. I want to spend every waking moment with my husband. And we all fantasize about just dying together, right? Like it's Notebook or bust over here, the Notebook. If you know that reference, they die together. And so when my husband started to gain weight, my husband is a big man and he started to gain weight. And honestly, ever since I started having babies, he took on, and he'll tell you this story himself, he took on that, what do they call it, like empathy pregnancy weight or whatever. He just kept taking on more and more weight. And I was in a total terror panic. But I had to come to the point where I recognized that's his yard. It's his side of the street. It's his life. It's his health. Is it going to affect me? Does it affect my view from over here? Yeah, it is. And also, all I can do is lovingly support him. There's another great analogy where I made a post about the canoes. Go check that out in the group. But super similar concept. I had to let it go. And you know what? When I did, my husband has now this beautiful journey with his body. Like he'll go through ebbs and flows of dieting and then not, and exercising like crazy and then not. And he's figuring it out on his own. And I have all this trust for him. It's like, look at, he's dealing with it on his own. And it's imperfect and it's messy and he's not super thin. And guess what? Neither am I. So it's his side of the street. And I also love that we have open communication about it. Like we've been able to talk through this shame triggers and things like that. Like I said, if he was sitting here today, I would tell you the same story. I don't dishonor my husband in sharing that. So you guys, this kind of communication is so doable. It takes practice. It's not easy. In some ways it can feel like learning a new language, but it's super possible. Let me just go through the steps one more time. Making agreements. First of all, make sure the agreement is super clear. That you were clear. Who, what, where, when, why, how. Okay? Second of all, I'm getting hungry. What is the second? Second of all is, oh yes, Doug, get their agreement. Get their agreement. Really truly ask them and be willing and open to negotiate if the thing you set up doesn't work, or even better, come up with the agreement together, right? Get agreement on both parts. Third, if they don't follow through, remember this is an opportunity for connection, both with yourself and with the other person. And you ask, what prevented you from the space of wanting to understand? I'd love to hear from you. You know, my DMs are always open. I'd love to hear how this resonates or how this applies. Or maybe you have some situation that you're thinking, you didn't really address it in this way and you have a question. Like, reach out to me. I'd love to help. Bye, guys.